Today it is really my honor, sorry, to introduce three amazing women who are all part of the UN Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. And you should have on each of your table a bit of a brochure that tells you more about this organization, but you can also go to the website to learn more. You guys come on up, Tonni. And so also, if you hear them today and you're intrigued and would like to know more, I am hosting something for them tomorrow from 2 to 4, a garden tea party at my house. And so contact me if you'd be interested in coming to that. But we have here the head of secretary for the UN Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, Tonni Brodber, and also Shaza Elmahdi, who is from Sudan. And Tonni is actually from the Caribbean, but currently living in Geneva in her current position. And Shaza is from Sudan and works with many different organizations on women's rights. And as you'll see up there, more about her. And also Anzhelika Bielova, who is from Ukraine, where she works very passionately trying to protect vulnerable Roma during the war happening.
Thank you. We're going to position ourselves in the chairs and have a quick conversation, and then we're really looking forward to engaging more with you. So why don't you guys, let's get our seats and then we'll talk a little bit. No, it's coming up. And the mics are right here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For all of our hospitality and environment. I'm now with primary. So yeah. As Cinda said, I'm Tonni Broadber, and I am now the head of secretariat for the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund. I was asked to share a little bit about what drew me to the fund and a little bit about the fund, and then I'm going to introduce two wonderful women who've been able to engage with the fund. So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a small country off the coast of Venezuela, to a Jamaican and a Trinidadian of Bajan heritage. And they didn't last, but they stayed good friends. But what happened then was that I met my stepfather. My mother was a professor of international relations, and my stepfather was an Afrikaner who had been expelled from South Africa. And he ended up in Trinidad and Tobago at the university, trying to better understand the investment that Canada had made in the university. A year later, I was in Canada and my whole world changed. And that was the first thing that led me to the United Nations, understanding how different people are and what we can learn from just being around one another, listening to one another, and trying to engage truthfully from different perspectives. My mother happened to be at Beijing with Dorothy because she was the UNDP lead for the Beijing conference, which was the fourth conference on women globally. I did not want to work for the UN because she worked for the UN, but somehow ended up there. And serendipity crossed paths in some ways before with Cinda because I was the representative in the Caribbean. And we started working on peace. We were doing a lot of ending violence against women and girls. We were doing a lot of work on economic empowerment, but the crime rate kept going higher and higher across the 22 countries that I covered with an incredible team. And we started to think maybe we need to think about peace. Not just about violence, but peace. So we worked on a national action plan, and I got a call. Would you consider applying to be the head of the Secretariat for the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund? Now, I live in Barbados. It's hard to leave Barbados. I said, well, tell me a little bit more about this fund. I said, go, just look online and then apply. And it was exactly what I needed at the time to remind me why I believe, one, in multilateralism, two, that peace is attainable. Because what the fund is the best of what the UN has to offer, because it's a partnership with women across civil society where they tell us what they need and we get to meet them where they are with the financing they need to deliver on peace in their communities. In the 7 months I've been with this fund, 4 or 5 people at least have come up to me to say that it has changed their lives. So I want you to hear now from women who change people's lives directly through their engagement with the fund. So I'm going to ask Shaza to start us off. And the question I also want you to share, because we were talking about it this morning, and I'm curious to hear what you think as well, but what is peace for you right now, given what is going on in Sudan?
Thank you, Tonni. Thank you all. I was telling Tonni earlier, there is such a good vibe in this room. And I really like that. And I like being with people who feel they have something to offer to someone like me coming from East Africa, from Sudan. My name is Shaza Elmahdi. I was born and raised in Khartoum, and I lived most of my life under a dictatorship who ruled Sudan for 30 years. And then a revolution happened in 2019, and he has been forced to leave. We had a transitional government, and then we had a coup a year later, and then we had a war a year and a half later. But this is a cycle in so many African countries, you know, there is no like kind of mature democracy most of the times. And when someone asks me, what is peace for you? It's not something we've taken for granted in Sudan, because we lived in a civil war with South Sudan for a long time until South Sudan's secession. We lived in a war since 2003 in Darfur, and I know most of you have heard about that. And actually the criminals who were involved in the war in Darfur, they are the ones who are involved in the war in Sudan right now. And this is happening because no accountability has taken place. And they haven't been held accountable at all for all the crime that they committed. When the former President al-Bashir was asked whether he killed 300,000 Sudanese people in Darfur, he said, no, we only killed 30,000, not 300,000. But this is the stories from the war zone. I was there in April 2023 with my 3 children living in Khartoum. And if you ask them at that time, what is war for you? War for them is not being able to go out and play soccer or play in the trampoline. War for them is me holding them under the bed because they were shooting bullets all over. After 2 years, I would say war for the Sudanese children, for 7 million of them, is not to go to school for 2 years. And war for 13 million of the Sudanese populations is to be displaced. So what is peace? Sometimes it's easy to initiate war. Sometimes it's really hard to imagine how peace looks like, especially if you live most of your life in a conflict situation, which is tough. I would say for me, it's, sorry, I had to evacuate my family. All of them are not in Sudan now. All my siblings, some of them in Egypt, they had to be in bus for 2 or 3 days traveling because the airport was shut down. I have brothers who live in Sudan as well. I don't have anyone right now in Sudan from my siblings. Those are the people who were born and raised in Sudan. In Sudan, you find a family that spent everything they have, almost 20 years of living and working abroad to build a house, and they had to leave those houses on one single night with everything behind. So I'm just saying it's not just, I'm sorry. It's fine, I will stop here. But I really appreciate the opportunity telling some of these stories. These are bad stories, and they just give us a whole lot of responsibility to take action, because it's all about solidarity and it's all about us being human beings. Thank you.
This is why we do the work we do, because there are human beings behind it. The numbers are human beings. The stories are people's lives. And this is not, no, it's okay. This is something that we thought was important. It's hard to travel in these days, not only because of the financial crunch, but it's hard to travel because Sudan was just put on the list of countries that cannot get visas to some countries. And it's also hard to travel because in this case, Anzhelika took a 9-hour bus from her town to Budapest, a flight to Munich, and then another 10-hour flight from there here. But we felt it was important to bring these women to you because there's nothing like meeting another human being and understanding that many of their concerns could be ours if circumstances were very, very different. Anzhelika, what is peace to you right now as a Roma woman leading work for so many who are marginalized in Ukraine?
Thank you, Tonni. And I'd like to thank you all because I see I see your kindness, and I see how you're building a better life for you, for your community, and for people who are surrounding you. You are helping other people, and thank you, Tonni, for our partnership and for this opportunity to speak to you. For me, peace, it is no longer wondering if I will have to rescue my entire family and evacuate again, because I left my hometown, Zaporizhia. It is partially my region occupied by Russians, and maybe you know Energodar power plant station, which is currently also occupied by Russians, so it is in my region. For me, peace, it is no longer following air raid warnings in the cities where my team, my relatives, my friend. It is no longer seeing news about how many people, how many children and adults were killed by Russian missiles. It is living in a silence and worrying about like ordinary things, what to cook for a dinner, and which country to choose for the vacation. It is not hearing peace. It is not hearing, Mom, I scared, when an air raid warning sounds because Russia has launched missiles. And that's how peace is looking not only for me, but for my friends, my relatives. And tonight, I was on the flight to Denver, and I was chatting with my relatives because Russia launched the missiles again, and they were sleeping in the bomb shelter in Kiev. And a lot of people were killed also because this attack. And I'd like to tell you shortly how I came to this work. I found that voice from me in 2020. I'm a Roma woman. I raised in my Roma community, in Roma family, and I know how as patriarchal culture and traditional practices are impacting a lot of women and girls. And I know what is GBV, domestic violence, because I went through it in my childhood. And in 2019, one man tried to kill me with a knife. It was an attempted feminicide. He tried to kill me with a knife in the entrance of my house. And I woke up after the surgery, and he put me in the line between the death and life. And I woke up after the surgery, and I was thinking, in which ward will live my daughter? She was 4 months at that time. And then war came, and we evacuated, and I was trying to use all my skills to help my own community, to help Ukrainians. And for now, we helped 106,000 people Ukraine with my
Did you
team
eat?
that I built for these
Oh,
3
sorry.
years.
Okay.
We are working on humanitarian aid, on women's spaces, economical empowerment of women together with WPHF fund. We are working on children's space, on their mental health, because they are so affected because of the war. They have a PTSD, they have a social adaptation problems and war trauma and nightmares. And but we are also working to build a women's leadership, because now women are on the forefront of humanitarian response. They are on the forefront of the recovery work, and they are those who have to be in this peace building process, because for these 3 years we are volunteering, we are helping to women, to children, and we know our people, we know how to work with the communities on the ground, and we know the solutions better. And that's why it is important for us to be in the decision-making processes. That's why it is important for us to be in all peace building processes, because it is not only about negotiations. Of course it is about it, but it is peace is starting in our communities. And all the efforts what women organizations are doing now, it is about early recovery. It is about the preparation for peace, because we have to be prepared for this day after. So my call to you, support us in this work, support and these spaces and these important spaces, which is given our opportunity to us to speak to you and to tell our stories. And you who are hearing, who are listening and understanding, this is a really important help that you are doing. Thank you.
Shaza would like to just add a few other words. Thank you so much, Anzhelika.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the reasons why I'm a little emotional today is it's a big Eid in Sudan, if you know that. It's Eid al-Adha. It's like Thanksgiving for us, where everyone comes. That's why I feel I'm a little emotional today. But thank you. I appreciate the opportunity talking to all of you. I just wanted to let you know we work closely also with women in Sudan. This war was largely made by men. I'm sorry for all fellow men in this room, but it was created by men in the armed militia and also in the Sudanese army who are fighting for the last 2 years. And the major victims are women and children. And they're not just killed or displaced, they have been raped. There's so many reports, including Amnesty International report and the fact-finding missions from the UN, which reported that, both of them reported that rape has been used as a weapon in this war, which is a nightmare. Some women in Sudan have killed themselves because they wanted to avoid the stigma, or they prefer going through the suicidal rather than going through the suicide rather than being raped. The struggle is big, and with the funding cut, USAID being eliminated in Sudan, and USAID, by the way, was supporting 50% of the humanitarian work in Sudan, and that is lost overnight. And other bilaterals as well are phasing out because they decided to support the militarization or buying weapons or defense industry or whatever. We cannot make this world peaceful with the amount of weapons and technologies of weapons we create. It's the opposite. And I believe people need to take action, not because this war is just affecting the Sudanese people over there, but it's also affecting the regional in East Africa, which is also a horrible region. There are so many wars going there. And we are very close to the Red Sea. The Red Sea has 20% of the global trade that is going globally. So if anything happened in Port Sudan, which is a major port of the Red Sea, has been under strikes over the last few weeks, we know that means the security of the trade, which a lot of people are talking about trade now, is also at stake. So in so many narratives, this war is not in the best of interest of anyone. it doesn't matter where that person is. And we pay the cost of this war and other wars as well. We pay it in our everyday living because of the skyrocketing prices and because of the fact that the solidarity in this world, if someone is not living peaceful, we all feel the threats. And this is a fact. Thank you for the Rotary Club because you have this in your values.
Thank you, Shaza, and thank you all. I was asking Cinda more and more about the Rotary because these 4 ways, I looked at her, I said, that's Rotary? I've heard about it so many times, but I wonder if we just had more understanding that peace is truth, peace is about good friendships, peace is about fairness, peace is justice, and peace is beneficial to all. And at this stage, it feels like there's so much happening in the world. How do we focus? How can we make change? But 80 years ago, after World War II, the countries of the world came together and said, we can and we will. And they came together on peace. And it feels like we keep coming together and we may have forgotten that moment in this moment. But we just invite you and thank you because attention in this world is so valuable. So thank you for your attention. And we're open to any questions that you have to share more about how we do this work, just to shine a light on the human beings that are doing the work of peace building in their communities.
Okay, thank you. I really feel it's a great privilege for us to have you come to talk with us today. My question is just specifically to Anzhelika. You're a Roma person from living in the Ukraine. Could you tell us a little bit more about Roma people? My ignorance, I have some idea you live from anywhere from Ukraine to Romania to Ireland. And give us a little bit about your history and maybe going back to the Second World War.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So Roma community in Ukraine, it is recognized as one of the vulnerable and the most marginalized groups. And of course, it is not only in Ukraine, but in Europe and worldwide. And of course, because of the war, the vulnerability of vulnerable groups just exacerbated. And it is also about Roma community. Roma women are facing multi-discrimination because they are women, because they are Roma, and because of their IDPs, returnees, mother of a lot of children, single mothers. And we are working to support them in different ways. But it is a holistic approach when we have to understand that Roma community is not homogeneous. Only in Ukraine, in our national minority, we have 15 ethnic groups who are different by the dialects, by the socioeconomical level. And I'm from Zaporizhia, and now I live in Zakarpattia, it is western part of Ukraine, and there are a lot of compact settlements where Roma live compactly and they are socially isolated. They live without heating, without water on the streets, and in really under the line of poverty. And about the history, we have to understand that in Zakarpattia, near the border with Hungary, it was after the 15th, a ghetto where was only Roma people. And now this ghetto is like Roma compact settlements, but it is still isolated and they still don't have access to the services, to the education. We have also segregated schools there in 21st century. So we have a lot of questions on which we have to work. And of course, again, about the history, we also went through the genocide, and my grandma is a child of the war, and she lived in the occupied city by the Nazis, and they were hiding because the Nazis were looking for the Roma and for the Jews. And of course, these things and this history is led to the systematic discrimination, to the stigmatization. And you know that a lot of people are calling us gypsy, but on the international level, it is recognized, is stated that we are Roma community, we are Roma people. And in 1976 in London, Roma Congress recognized it is like the name of the Roma national minority worldwide. I will be happy to answer more questions, but it is really important for me to be here and to be the voice of my community because it is often overlooked in different documents on the international level. And I really appreciate you, Tonni, to bring me here. Thank you.
As everybody knows, the United States has significantly reduced its humanitarian aid around the world. My question is, how has this affected you either directly or indirectly?
I can just give you one example that I was very close to over the last few weeks. In Sudan, after the war, lots of the infrastructure has been destroyed. No access to internet, there is some sort of internet blackout, and no electricity, and of course, the transportation lines have been interrupted. So the only way for the Sudanese community, which is a collaborative community in its nature, is to come up together and establish what they call it takaya. And takaya now has made its way to the English language as well. It's an Arabic word. And it is done by the sophists in Sudan, where they establish a big kind of food station for the poor people to come and eat in their masjid, which is traditional mosque where the sophist people used to live. Now in Sudan, they established this takaya, or the English translation is central kitchens in public streets for Sudanese people to come and feed themselves and feed the poor because there is no way to get access to any food. And 23 millions were at the famine, what they call it as famine, by the definition of the United Nations and World Food Program. This takaya was lucky to get the support of the USAID. Actually, I was told USAID for the first time actually managed to compromise some of the bureaucracy in it to figure out which ways to support collective actions like that. These are not organizations. These are public movements. They decided to make these kitchens for food for kids and hungry people. I was told that out of 100 kitchens in Khartoum, they only have 20 now. And this is mainly because of the absence of USAID. But I'm telling you, it's not just USAID. There are other countries who used to support Sudan as well. They also eliminated the funding, the Swedish, the German, and just there's a long list. And this is also directly related to the change of politics in these countries as well.
I will add something about the context of Ukraine. UN Women and Office of Gender Commissioner of Ukraine recently conducted a research, and according to this research, 93% of women's organizations closed at least one program aimed to prevent from gender-based violence. And the third of the organizations are preparing in the next 6 months to close their organizations at all. And I'd like to say that mostly US cuts impacted the grassroots organizations who are really working on the ground, who are working on the frontline territories, who are delivering humanitarian aid and putting their lives in the insecurity situation. And it is crucial for us in this time to have support of the private sector, of the philanthropists, because in a lot of organizations are receiving funds from them. And it is really important to have this support. And I know that a lot of philanthropists in US are helping Ukraine as you. And it is important to have this dialogue only to strengthen this cooperation.
I can add a little bit as well from the UN perspective. So the fund is It's a multi-partner trust fund, so it's not one agency's fund. We benefited from 23 million last year, an investment by the US government, which we're very grateful for. It was for Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, South Sudan, Mali, and Ethiopia. We still haven't gotten the pause lifted for Afghanistan and Haiti. We've only gotten the pause lifted for Haiti and Ukraine. And so we are unable to support the civil society organizations in the other countries to continue their work. But we've been lucky because our project has not yet been terminated. But there are many other UN agencies, good people. Now, nothing is perfect. We have to be more efficient. But there are a lot of food security issues, and that was the investment by USAID and the government of the United States in our fund, at least, was on food security. Our colleagues at WFP, UNICEF, UN Women have all had projects terminated on violence against women and girls and issues around food security. And because of the issues we work on, we've been asked to be careful with our language. So don't put gender in the document. Don't put marginalized groups, the word marginalized, LGBTQ plus communities. One of the persons who I met who was so grateful for WPHF is a trans woman from Uganda who needed to flee immediately, and because of our funding was able to do so. So there's that, but there's also the US represents something very beautiful in the world, or represented something very beautiful in the world. It was in San Francisco where the UN Charter was done. But that is slipping. And to Shaza's point, a lot of other countries are saying, well, okay, the US is not doing it, so militarization now. And we know, and we're seeing militarization does not lead to peace.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today. Could you give us a little bit of an idea of what you do on a day-to-day basis? What are your on-the-ground activities?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. It is really valuable. So first of all, what we are doing, like, let's imagine my week. So it is mainly, my organization works in Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, Kryvyi Rih. I think you know these three cities by the news because it is almost every time, every day it is shelling in these cities. Also in Uzhhorod and Kiev. So we are working in 5 regions. We are distributing humanitarian aid. It can be hygiene kits. For now, it is hygiene kits. We are doing the repairing works in the communities, in the Roma households, which is affected because of the Russian missiles. It is a replacing of the windows, of the doors. So mainly I coordinate this work. Then we are working on the ground with Roma community in the compact settlements. For example, last week we conducted 3 big celebrations in Roma compact settlements to bring more happiness to children, because it was like the day of the children and the first day of the summer, and we conducted the great celebrations with the animators. It is day by day work in the children's spaces where our psychologists are working, teachers who are trying to fill the gap between the knowledges of vulnerable group people, children from vulnerable groups. We have a math, we have an English classes, and etc. And it is work with the communities on the protection and prevention, GBV, different lectures on reproductive health. And because we are the first organization in Ukraine, Roma organization, who raised the issue of gender-based violence in Roma community. And we are trying not only to work with community, but also to raise gender experts through the Roma leaders, Roma women leaders, to be the agents of changes in their own communities. Thank you. But I can speak about this more.
Thank you. I'm chairing the board for a Sudanese Displaced Women Network, and we work closely with WPHF, mainly to engage more women in the peace processes and to get them prepared to be more effective in terms of their participation in the peace processes. Because not only the war is made by men, the peace are also made by men, and they're not really considerable to the struggles of those women, especially the women who survived the war. I'm really grateful for this project because it does help train women, and it does help also in the psychological support, especially when it comes to the trauma and PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorders that those women are facing. There's also certain elements in it in terms of connecting the voice of those very local women to the international platforms. 3 weeks ago, when Port Sudan got hit, Port Sudan is the city in Eastern Sudan, when it got hit with the drone strike as part of this war, as part of this fund, we were able to also evacuate some of our team members who were in Port Sudan to another safer places. So this kind of work, they seem simple, but they are extending lifelines for those women living in Sudan. And the cost of doing this work is not that big. I actually look at this opportunity, and I look at the positive side of it, of the cutting of the funding, as an opportunity to rethink alternative and innovative solutions on how to support those women. We might not be able to wait for 4 years to change the politics and change and reverse some actions happening around the world. But there is a chance to act right now and help them with the minimum that we have, with the solidarity, with just being here and listening to us. And I really appreciate that. I think this meeting tells me a lot about the beautiful America that we know. Thank you.
I can quickly say my day-to-day because I think a lot of people wonder what the UN does and what people in the UN do. At this stage, my day-to-day, I have to, on a weekly basis, because we try to be quick, sign off and approve on the applications. We receive over 1,000 applications when we do call for proposals. So I have to sign off, make sure we're supporting the right teams. The program team does an excellent job of making sure that it's easier for me to sign off on those. For our Women Human Rights Defender Fund, I have to move really quickly, sometimes more than once a week, to make sure that our protection grants are signed off on quickly and that women are at peace process tables. Sometimes we get a request in on a Monday, the person needs to travel on the Monday in the next week. They need to go quickly because, for example, we had some women come from one country to the US to speak to senators, and we had to sign off and make sure I had to sign off on their travel and everything else. But beyond that, there are really good governments still in this world still. And I have to make sure that they know that we're a proven process. I need to make sure that people know what it is we do. And I have to work closely with my operations manager so that every financial document is accurate and reflects the truth and that we're working within the policies of the organization. So my weeks are busy, and then after that I go and I mother and I wife and I daughter.
Well, what an amazing program. Thank you very much. You know, Rotary is also has a priority of peace. And I was reading some of our materials. We have this idea of a negative peace and a positive peace. And, you know, we've learned from you some more illustrations of what that really looks like on the ground. You know, a negative peace might be a quiet night without bombs falling and missiles. It might be the absence of violence. It might be lack of children having nightmares. But there's also the positive peace that you create and that women create, the ability to go to school, to get a visa to travel, to stay in the house that you saved money and built yourself, and the ability to decide what to cook for dinner. That's a positive piece that we've learned from you. War may be made by men, but women pick up the pieces. And for a long time, women, I think, have been trying to also to bring the peace. So we thank you for all of that. Rotary has another priority, which is the elimination of polio around the world, and we're pretty close. But in your honor today, each of you, Anzhelika and Shaza and Tonni, we are donating 100 doses of polio plus vaccine.